in, everybody. I'm Bobby Burton. It's time for a little talking ball on Texas football. I'm joined by Jeff Howe, Jerry Hamilton out with a little under the weather today. Got the sniffles. You know, Jerry, he can be weak like that. He'll take any chance he gets to not be on. I'm teasing. He's pretty sick. Hopefully, makes it back in the morning with us for coffee and football. For now, Jeff Howe stepping in. Jeff, this may be the first time you and I have done a Q&A session together. We've done videos together. This may be the first time you and I do a solo Q&A. We'll get to y'all's questions and topics, whatever we want to talk about tonight. That's what we do on Monday nights, talking ball. This episode brought to you by our friend Brett Robin, Dr. Brett Robin over at Austin Orthopedic Institute. We'll talk more about him and his services a little bit later in the show, but want to say that. Jeff, welcome in. I know you've had a busy day. We've been tracking this coaching search for the Longhorns at the running back spot. What else is going on for you, man?
A busy weekend at baseball. We got home opener tomorrow for Longhorn baseball. Got weather permitting a series this weekend. Big wins for men's and women's basketball over the weekend. I was at the men's game. Didn't make the women's game on Sunday, but actually the women have a weird schedule. They got a week off and then a Monday game, which is odd, but I guess, hey, it's going to be on SEC Network proper, so maybe it's a TV deal. And then the men get a few days off, and then they'll play at South Carolina. Couple notes on that. Rodney Terry sounded pretty optimistic. He said, knock on wood, they'll finally get Kendall Weaver back on Saturday against South Carolina. He hadn't been healthy. He hadn't played since the Auburn game back at the 1st of January. So he's missed over a month and only played 2 minutes in that game. And then Arthur Kaluma with the knee, it's just going to kind of, hey, get through the week and then see how it feels day of. So on that SEC injury report, you'll probably see Arthur Kaluma on that the rest of the way.
That makes sense. Texas softball, they play Akron on Wednesday as well. They're 11-0. Texas is currently. And then they go to Tucson this weekend for a 5 or 6 team tournament, including the University of Arizona. Stanford will be out there as well, Colorado State, some other teams. So Mike White and his team will be going out that way. In general, just a lot of stuff going on right now on the 40 acres. Of course, recruiting also going on. 2 Californians today are added to the list of official visitors for Texas. Cade Wyatt, the Dixon, the wide receiver out of Santa Ana Mater Dei. This makes the 3rd player from Mater Dei that is set up to make an official visit to the University of Texas. That's an Orange County school out in Southern California that I think has 3, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 Heisman Trophy winners. The only high school in the country that has 3, with Matt Leinart, Bryce Young, and, oh man, who am I forgetting? John Hart, a Notre Dame guy back in the 40s or 50s, also won a Heisman Trophy. So keep that in mind. 3 Mater Dei guys. And then Sam Utu, Jeff, you and I were talking about him just briefly a minute ago. Another Southern California player, another offensive lineman set up to visit Texas. We were talking about this morning. Jerry Hamilton says there's just so many offensive linemen right now. It's almost ridiculous. Texas in on just about every great one in the country.
Kyle Flood can't take all these guys, Bobby, but that's the sad thing. At the same time, they've got a chance to reload and really set themselves up for the foreseeable future in this class. Sam Utu, who we've talked about on the channel, I mean, Texas might be the leader for him right now, or at least they're in the mix. So you can't turn these guys down. I know we talked about the kids from Florida, but hey, Southern California is a place where Sark is going to keep going back to. Several guys on the staff have ties there. And, Lincoln Riley and USC, they're not lighting the world on fire right now in recruiting. And, UCLA football, that's a whole different discussion altogether. But Southern California is open. So if you can get, I know it's probably not the depth that historically has been in Southern California, but you can still get quality prospects from there. And I like that they're doing it. In the in-state guys too, Bobby, I mean, they're probably either leading for or at the top group of pretty much name your in-state offensive lineman that you can think of. Here's my question for you, Bobby, because you've evaluated offensive lineman just about as long as anybody I know, longer than anybody I know. Of the in-state crop, let's just take a look at the in-state crop. Is there anybody that if it was a Bobby Burton personal ranking would be high on your list, or that you watch the film and you just love them?
That isn't already ranked highly.
Yeah.
I mean, John Turntine, I think, is that guy. The one guy that is not getting enough rankings love, I'll put it that way. The one that I think is Nick Robertson down at Klein.
Yeah.
Big fan of his. I think the body construction, along with ball get off and quickness and natural strength, is a real plus. So if I had to say someone that's underranked currently, I think most people have him as a 3-star. I think he's got offers from everybody that comes by and sees him. So he's not a 3-star. I'll just, what will he end up being ranked? I don't know. But I would put him as a guy that I think is an elite prospect, despite not being ranked as such. There are other guys in this class. I mean, Felix Ojo, I think, had a really good camp this weekend again. But, the guy that I point to that say not enough people are talking about, that's the guy for me. Yeah. I watched tell you what, I watched the Cody Green from Mater Dei today. By the way, he's not in state, he's out of state, obviously. But we watched him this morning on Coffee and Football. That's the first time I'd really taken an extended look at him. He's kind of freaky good. Again, out of state, but somebody that's worth talking about. What about you? One that you like in particular?
I'm personally in state. Nicholas Robertson's a good one. I'm personally a fan. I know Euless Trinity offensive linemen don't necessarily have the best track record, but you talk about toe at 374 to be able to. He doesn't look 374. I'm telling you, if there's such a thing as a guy can wear 374 really well, he does it. I just like his mentality. I like the fact that he's can do some body reshaping. It seems like that's kind of what Texas wants, what Kyle Flood ideally wants. He'll take a kid that's 340, 350 and say, all right, we'll get you down to 330 and you'll be a really good player. Of the outstate kids, Samuel Roseborough from Clearwater, Florida, of the out-of-state kids that I've seen, Bobby, he's the one for me that I don't know that he gets enough love nationally. I think he's a tremendous prospect. I mean, talking about 6'5", 290. You watch him finish guys on tape. His mom lives in Austin, works in Austin, so that's a plus right now for Texas. So he's the kid of the out-of-state crop. Samuel Roseborough is the guy that I've got circled. If he ended up in this class, then you can give me whatever else it looks like. I'll say it's a win.
This could be a really high-level tackle class. Texas missed on high-level tackles, I think. Yeah. Left tackles for sure in 2025 class. 2026 could be the direct opposite of that. And couldn't come sooner because Texas is going to need them. Hey, before we get to y'all's questions, we want to say thank you to our sponsor, Monday's Talkin' Ball, brought to you by our friend Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute for sponsoring On Texas Football. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, as well as a Westlake running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages. He specializes in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. Right now, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients. Make sure you get in there and give him a call in the new year with convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000, 512-856-1000, and get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love to do. Funny stuff, Jeff, when you talk about it, for me and Brett Robin, I remember him in high school, right? He was a workout warrior in high school, really was one of those guys that maximized. I asked Rod Babers, who played with Brett, I go, would you let Brett work on your knee or your shoulder? He goes, he may be the only teammate I'd let work on my shoulder. So the answer there is he is endorsed by Rod Babers as the teammate that he would allow to work on his shoulder or knee. Thank you very much, Brett, for that. All right, let's get going with the questions. Let's start with Juan Garza. What's the latest on the running back coaching search? Jeff, you and I are kind of simpatico on this, I think. Norval McKenzie, running back coach out of Georgia Tech, who is a Vanderbilt grad, coached at Vanderbilt, recruited Cedric Alexander out of Austin LBJ. That he was the Commodores' leading rusher this year. Also had some success at Georgia Tech and is from the Atlanta area and has recruited Florida as well. Is one of the names of interest of late for the Longhorns. We can say that as of today. Also, be on the lookout for E.J. Bartell, a running backs coach out of Nebraska, as a possibility. We've heard some other names as well, but those are the two that we feel confident are at least being under consideration or have been under consideration. But I will say this, because Grady Jenkins says, who are the top 2 or 3? And here's what I can tell you, Grady. Right now, I don't know if there's more than 3 or 4 or what the final number is. Jerry and I talked about it as well. It could be Sark's still waiting to talk to some guys in the pros. I mean, Sark's a little specific about this, and I think you can get ahead of yourself a little bit in reporting. Right now, we feel confident that McKenzie and Bartell are part of the discussion. Beyond that, I even have a hard time saying that's the case with Keenan Hill out of Baylor, or even Rashad Samples from Oregon at this point. What do you have to add to that, Jeff? Anything?
Yeah, I said this when we started talking about the defensive backs coach opening, and they haven't announced it with Mark Orfe yet, but the assumption is he's coming to Texas to coach corners. But
No. We think yes, the assumption is corners, not safeties, which is interesting because Blake Gideon was the safeties coach. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I keep going back to how, and maybe this is me reading too much into it, Bobby, but I when I asked Sark the spring, so this was spring of 2023, Chris Jackson's first spring, and I asked him about the wide receiver room because Chris Jackson was the 3rd position coach that group had in 3 years. And I remember Sark just kind of looked at me and wasn't upset with me, but he said, yeah, it hadn't been ideal. And you can tell he just wasn't happy with the whole situation. So I know in these coaching searches, and we do it too, we can be like fans and get enamored with the hot name or the guy that was here that's gone on and made a name for himself and can come back. But I just don't know if Sark is into hiring, mercenary type guys. I think he wants guys that have some staying, that have a chance to stick around a little bit. I don't think he wants guys now. That's not to say he wouldn't deny anybody on his staff a job, but I don't think he wants somebody that he feels like is going to use the Texas job as a stepping stone to something else. I think he wants guys that want to be at Texas, want to do well at Texas, and a few years down the road go on to, like Tashard Choice, whether you want to be an NFL assistant coach, you want to be a college head coach like Blake Gideon. But I can just keep going back to that, Bobby. I think he wants guys that will stick around for a minute.
He doesn't want job hoppers.
Yeah.
And I'm not college coaching period in the pro or college ranks is a nomadic profession. I mean, look, they bought so many and sold so many different houses. They can't even tell you. I mean, they really have.
Yeah.
And I say this because I think Sark does want some level of continuity amongst his coaches. Think about how much he's had and been lucky to have with Jeff Banks, with Pete Kwiatkowski, AJ Milwee, as well as Terry Joseph. Those guys. He's had Kyle Flood, been with him from the start, came over from Bama. That's a good nucleus, right? He's trying to add to that nucleus at some level, right? And I think that, hanging around 3 or 4 years for an assistant coach is actually quite a long time. Hopefully he is able to do that and replicate it. The thing that I like about Sark, I mean, it's like somebody reported today that Torrey Becton got a pay raise and turned down an NFL team. I know of, I think, 4 Texas assistants that have turned down NFL jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not reporting their names because I don't know that they want it out there, but look, Texas has had multiple coaches turn down NFL jobs, not just ones that have been reported out there. And so I'm saying this because Sark wants those guys to at least think hard. He wants them to not, see this as a jumping off point. Sark's, he knows the game. He's been there. He's done it himself, but he's looking for guys that are looking to win and not necessarily looking for their next job.
Yeah.
And, I'm not saying all these coaches want to win. I'm not trying to take that away from them. They all want to win. I think that he's looking for people that want to stay and be part of it, part of something. The other thing that Sark, we have to watch for is can he build and rebuild around solid assistants like Nick Saban did?
Yeah.
Because Nick Saban had it was a carousel of assistant coaches in and out. And he was able to maintain that roster even with those, but he did that without the portal.
Mm-hmm.
Now in the portal time, how would Nick Saban handle so much turnover at his position coaching ranks? We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I think too, Bobby, with Sark, we saw that's on the Regents meeting agenda, extensions and raises for Jeff Banks and Johnny Nansen. I think that's Sark sending a message. Hey, if you're good to me and you're good to Texas and good for Texas, you will be rewarded for your effort. You'll be compensated and made whole. So, yeah, I mean, you're going to have multiple assistant coaches now, Bobby, making over 7 figures in base salary.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that to me is I know head coaches' salaries have been on the rise, but that to me is wild. And honestly, until we get some kind of, power for autonomy where they can create their own rules, their own governing body, their own structure, with it being the Wild West right now. Yeah, I think the good assistant coaches in college football are worth every penny right now, having to deal with everything they got to deal with.
It's a tough job. One of the things people are saying, well, does that mean Texas didn't? Because Jeff Banks and Johnny Nansen were singled out in that the report or the minutes from the agenda of the Board of Regents. The reason those guys were singled out doesn't mean other guys didn't get raises and longer agreements. The reason they're singled out is if you go over $1 million as an employee of a university, it has to be approved by the Board of Regents. So Kyle Flood was already above that. Pete Kwiatkowski was already above that. So they don't have to go back and re-approve their agreements. But Banks and Nansen went above that. And so they had to re-approve that. That's something for everybody to think about there. We'll see where else Texas goes. Another thing that you mentioned there that's going to be interesting, Ross Dellinger, a friend of ours that's been on our show a couple times from Yahoo Sports, Jeff, is reporting right now that the SEC and the Big Ten are getting together and trying to decide the future of college athletics from a NCAA football championship perspective. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a while as well. All right, let's get to some more questions and comments. Feel free if you want to join in on the chat line. Thank you, Juan, for that super chat. We appreciate it very much. Let's start here with Kenneth Cassidy. Kenneth goes, Bobby, Jeff, what are you hearing about the freshman that reported in January? Any surprises?
Oh, I've got one. I've got one for sure. I don't know if he's going to play, but the fact that Nick Brooks is getting positive reviews and that people are impressed with him and that he's really taken to workouts, he's the one guy, Bobby, that when I looked at that class, if you say, hey, who's a guy that's a little underrated, a little underranked, I just thought he was better than his rating indicated. And the fact that he's been one of the first names mentioned of this crew, I love that for Nick Brooks. If anybody could tell, my thoughts on this football team, this football program are very O-line centric Probably because I spent 15 years complaining about it, and now I'm celebrating the riches of the fruits of the labor, if you will. But yeah, no, the fact that Nick Brooks, and it's funny, we're talking about it, Jerry and Rod and I, with the tight end preview that's up on the channel right now. Hey, is there a young freshman that can play the role of that sixth offensive lineman, that extra offensive lineman? Probably not. So I don't know if there's a way for Nick Brooks to get onto the field unless, hey, if he can go beat out Brandon Baker or whoever, have at it. So you probably won't see him this year, but that's a really positive development. Kind of one of the more under, and we didn't report on it as a whole as a media corps because, when you're the program you covers in a national championship race, you don't kind of lose track of developmental offensive linemen. But the fact that now you're hearing that, hey, Nate Kibble made some strides during his redshirt year. I like the fact that these guys, that the beauty's in the eye of the beholder once you get past a certain level of prospect. And the fact that these guys, Bobby, that Kyle Flood is singled out, they say, well, why would you take that guy instead of that guy? No, these are the guys Kyle Flood wants. The fact that some of those guys, at least the early returns are good, that makes me feel like they're on the right track in terms of the guys they're evaluating.
I would agree with that. It's a big year. It just in general. I want to add. Let me answer Kenneth's question. Yes, on Nick Brooks, we've heard positive reviews there, Jeff. We've heard very positive reviews thus far on Justice Terry, and I've started hearing some very positive things on Jamie French. So that doesn't mean it's to the exclusion of anybody else. It's just those are three guys that have been mentioned to me as, hey, these might be dudes. So there could be others. I'm just giving you what I've got, and that list doesn't include guys like Nick Townsend, who's not on campus yet, or Jonah Williams, who is, but he's working out with the baseball team. So we'll see where that goes. But those are the three that I've heard the most public and popular responses on at this point. I hope that helps a little bit, Kenneth. I will say this: when we talked about it a little bit over the weekend, Jerry and I did. He and I both heard that some of the freshmen are chirping a little bit. They're in there. We're going to beat you out. We're going to win a job. We're coming for your job. And they haven't even put the pads on yet. And I know some of those upperclassmen are just like laughing internally because they did it too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were the same way, probably coming in. Oh, we're here to take your job. And they thought the same thing. And then they figured out, these other guys been around a weight program a little bit longer than me, maybe. Some of them did.
That's but I think Texas fans, a younger generation, Bobby, that might have missed it. When you look at how when Mac was stacking one talented class on top of another in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I've heard Rod talk about it too. You get there and you see a pretty easy path to the field. The first wave of guys, they see a pretty easy path to the field, and a lot of those guys win jobs. And by the time you leave, if you're Rod Babers, you're looking behind you, and there's a young, hungry, a Michael Griffin, a Michael Huff, a young Cedric Griffin, Aaron Ross, guys that have, kind of are chomping at the bit to get on the field. And hey, the talent level from the time I got in here to the time I'm leaving has increased significantly. So, a guy like David Benda probably looks around that room and is like, hey, probably looks a little bit different in here than when I got here in 2019.
Well, I'm going to say this. So I've done the full gamut with Texas. When I went to school at Texas, 88 to 92, we had one really, really good year. Team went to the Cotton Bowl, got throttled by Miami in the Cotton Bowl, but they were a top 5 team in college football that year, even though they got throttled like they did. That was a really good football team. But after that, they didn't really get good again until, Ricky Williams came in, but they were only really good on offense. They weren't really good on defense. They didn't get really good until Mac's 3rd, 4th, 5th year, that kind of area where they weren't just beating A&M. They were now competing on a higher plane. For example, they played Colorado in the Big 12 championship game and lost. Otherwise, they would have been playing for the national championship that year, maybe. But that's really when Texas turned the corner. But the reason I'm mentioning this is I could see it coming. I remember I was knee deep in recruiting, covering national recruiting at the time, and you could just see it in the classes they were bringing in. Mm-hmm. This is the first time since that time in 20 plus years, literally 21, 22, 23 years that I've seen Texas do this. So keep that in mind. If you're out there and you want me to give you a comparison, it's really straightforward to me.
Yeah.
I've been doing this a long time. There's no other comparison to make other than that's exactly what this is. It's how it's supposed to look. And I will even say this. There are times that I think that Sark may be even he's pickier than Mac.
Yeah.
In my opinion, much pickier from a recruiting perspective than Mac. In fact, now Mac was really picky about 1 through 12. I mean, in his roster in every recruiting class, but there's some stuff that makes sense. But that's how it's supposed to look.
Mm-hmm.
This is how teams are supposed to look whenever they go out and have 14 guys go to a combine. They're doing that. Let's go to this one. David Keith Williams with a question of sorts. Bobby Burton, Jeff Howe. I know there are ethnic similarities and height and weight similarities as recruits of Smith Orogbo and Joe Osai. But do either of you see play style similarities in them? I saw both of them coming out of high school. Osai has a bigger frame.
Definitely, yeah.
So a broader shoulder. I don't think he has necessarily longer arms, but they're different. They're different. And I will say this. I think Orogbo is actually twitchier than Osai, slightly.
The one thing I'll say about Joe, and we don't know this, won't know this with Smith Orogbo until he's on the field, but Joseph Osai, even as a young cat, he was pretty violent at the point of attack, and he was willing to strike you. So and that really kind of set him apart. I mean, I remember Bobby early in his career, you talk to Charles and Menahu or some of those vets, like, hey, here's some of the young cats, and they'd be like, hey, I'm telling you, Osai's gonna be really good before he's done. Like he's willing to be physical, he's willing to put the work in. He's really talented, hasn't scratched the surface, and those guys were right. They hit the nail on the head. So that's the one thing we don't know though, Bobby, and we won't know that until Smith Orogbo gets the pads on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And unfortunately, he's injured still a little bit, recovering from a knee scope of sorts this season. I would say this, talking about Osai and what guys are willing to do and not do and put up with. He played half a season hurt, like seriously hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't remember that or think about that, but I'll always recall that. I mean, it's hard enough to play football healthy, but to play and still be injured with a cast on your arm, that takes a little kind of, I don't know if you're all there in between the ears. If you do that, but I appreciate it. You know what I mean? That's the kind of thought process you have with Joe Osai.
Brandon Jones, Bobby, was another one around that time that, there were several guys even before that Tom Herman era. Brandon Jones was a guy, he missed the bowl game his senior year because it was like, hey, just, almost like having to protect him from himself kind of thing because he had the shoulder injury he played through. Adrian Phillips was a guy. AP was a guy that played hurt a lot. Trey Hopkins was a guy that played hurt a lot. And surprise, surprise, all four of those guys we just talked about, they've been able to carve out a niche for themselves in the NFL.
Kent Perkins did too and made the NFL.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the guys that I don't want to say. I mean, you never want somebody to play when they're truly injured and can hurt themselves further.
Right.
But Texas was so bereft of talent. They were one deep essentially for a decade. And sometimes not even one deep. That if those guys didn't play, there was such a big drop that they knew that they would be hurting their team if they didn't play. And I think some of those guys did the right thing. I think of Adrian Phillips and just smile every time I do, in part because he was not the highest ranked recruit. He was a high school quarterback.
Yep.
And came in and just worked really hard. Took the same undrafted now, and what's on his second or third contract in the NFL?
He's AP's done now, but he got.
Okay.
This is the best thing I say about Adrian Phillips. And by the way, Bobby, he's kind of and I can remember, one of the last Dwayne Keenan loved recruiting. I don't know if if it was by coincidence or he sought these guys out. Adrian Phillips, one of the last like legit option quarterbacks in high school to go on and play DB for Dwayne Keenan. But I'll tell you this: Adrian Phillips was signed to multiple contracts by Bill Belichick. So that tells me all I need to know about how Adrian Phillips was valued in the National Football League.
Yeah. All right. This one coming from Victor Santiago. Victor, thank you for the question. Haven't heard much about wide receiver Aaron Butler. Do you think he will crack into the wide receiver rotation this year? Jeff, you saw a couple of those practices at the Peach Bowl, Cotton Bowl. What did you see from Butler? Yes, no, definitely behind other guys. What?
Well, I think he was behind. I think he was behind when he got here, just because he was. Look, go back and watch his tape. He's clearly just out athleting everybody. So I think he had to learn some of the nuances of playing wide receiver. But you look at the physical skills, Bobby. There's two jobs really since the college rules haven't changed. Kick returner kind of is what it is, but this team's going to need a punt returner. So I think he's got a chance to maybe do that. And maybe he's that speed guy that we've been talking about. Hey, they need a speed guy to emerge. But even then, whether it's Aaron Butler or whoever it is, I still think you need to look for that speed dynamic in the portal, regardless of who emerges. So with me and with my thoughts on Aaron Butler aren't necessarily is he a guy or not. I'm thinking about it in terms of the depth as a whole at wide receiver. And even if Aaron Butler kills it this spring, I still think you need to go to the portal and get a wide receiver. Because me personally, and again, I'm not Chris Jackson. He gets paid a lot more money than I do to do this, which I get paid none to be a coach at Texas. But if I'm Chris Jackson, I just want a little bit more experience in that room.
I agree with that on the idea of taking one from the portal. So what I saw from Aaron Butler, I'm going to say he's going to fight to get on the field at Texas his entire career. I'm just going to be – I know that's not going to be popular with some fans that think he's going to be an answer. And the reason why is because I think he's fast, but I don't think he's super fast. I think that DeAndre Moore's got that spot on lockdown that he runs at right now, and at least has it for one more year. And I think it's going to be really hard for him to make his mark at Texas. Not saying it can't be done, but if I were and I'm not saying he didn't have the most natural hands that I saw in practices either. So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
The other thing too, Bobby, is he's in terms of learning the offense, he's got a year on Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, and Dalen McCutcheon. But when you look at those guys, those guys that redshirted last year that are freshmen or the true freshmen, it's kind of, if you look at the receiver rotation as a whole, you really got 6 guys basically competing for, 3 spots.
Yep.
At wide receiver this spring. So, and I just like the true freshmen better if all things equal and those guys are anywhere close to even. I think it's going to be a matter of when, not if, that true freshman class surpasses that group of 23 signees.
Yeah, I would say I agree with that, except for Parker Livingstone and Ryan Wingo, obviously.
Yeah, I'm taking Wingo out of it. He's a proven commodity for me at this point.
Something about Livingstone, I think he's got some moxie to him, as well as really good long speed. So we'll see. I mean, look, it's going to be a room that's going to be really, really talented. Mm-hmm. And so you could be an Aaron Butler and be really, really talented and still not do well. And I also want to add this. I'm not saying that Aaron Butler is never going to play. I think that he's going to have a hard time finding a real role because I think there's some other guys.
It's a term Rod told me several years ago, Bobby, rate of development. And by the time Aaron Butler gets it figured out, have that group of Jamie French, Dalen McCutcheon, and Khalil Lockett, have they passed him? in the pecking order by the time he gets it figured out.
I speaking of that, somebody told me the other day that Dalen McCutcheon of the freshman receivers may be the one that's most ready to go, which is not what you expected. Which is not necessarily he wasn't the high. He was the lowest of the three rated. That doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to be above French or Lockett, et cetera, but something to mention as we discuss things here. All right, we're going to the top of the hour today. I want to mention our sponsor one more time before we take a few more questions. Special thanks to Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute for sponsoring On Texas Football. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. Give him a call. Get your new year started off right. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic specialist, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000. All right, you ready for some more questions here, Jeff?
Fire away.
Let's see let's start with this one. I'm praying for Colton Vasek to stay healthy, man. Me too.
Yeah.
And he made some plays against Ohio State. Inserted him in the game, made 2 plays in a row. I mean, they got to get him healthy and get him on the field because he can be the strong side end answer for Texas eventually. Ethan Burke going to be getting that job this year after Barron Sorrell graduates. But Colton Vasek is a natural strong side end. I'd love for him to come back and be healthy this year.
And it does feel like when he's on the field, he's making plays. It's just get him the on the field part that needs to get resolved.
His making play rate is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like if you go back and look at it, so having him healthy, he would get more time because their coach is going to play you if you make plays. Football is the great meritocracy. Because these guys make millions of dollars a year, and I'm talking about the coaches.
Mm-hmm.
They want to keep those $1 million a year jobs, so they put the best players in. That's their gig.
I've heard Rod and many other DBs over the years said Dwayne Aquino, one of his favorite sayings in practice he'd go to often. My check is in your mouth. Yeah. So I mean, they understand what the deal is. It's kind of a lazy comp, and I made it a while back, and I saw somebody in the chat mentioned it. I hope what becomes of Colton Vasek. I hope it's not a situation, Bobby, with Brian Pickrell back in the day, which in a room of really talented edge rushers, he was really good. It's just his body just would not allow him to stay on the field. So I hope we're not dealing with that with Colton Vasek. But I'll say this with Vasek, at least we're not talking about another back issue. Once you start talking about guys that are kind of longer torso guy, you start talking about back issues, that stuff, that starts to concern me. But hey, if it was going to be anything, at least it's not another back deal.
All right, let's go to this one from Justin Yarbrough. Thanks for the super chat, Justin. What type of NIL regulations would y'all expect to change in the future? And how likely is it we only have one portal window next year? All right, this is a great question. I'm going to start with the number of portal windows next year. I think they're going to shoot for one portal window next year. Mm-hmm. Coaches are going to press hard for that if they can get it at all. I'm not saying they'll be able to get it, but this worrying about who's going to be on your team in the summertime before you got to play a game in 4 weeks. That's not where they want to be. So I think they're going to press for that, Justin. It's none of it is for sure yet, though. I want to add that none of it's for sure. So what type of NIL regulations would y'all expect to change in the future? College sports wants legitimate NIL. And what they believe is legitimate NIL is a company like, I don't know, Red Bull paying Arch Manning to be a sponsor. They don't want Joe Booster being the sponsor. My question is, why not?
Yeah.
They'll say because it's not fair. And my thought process is, who says it's not fair? I mean, if somebody, and this is the God's honest truth, if somebody wants to pay a player money, you've already done away with they hid behind the idea of fair play and amateurism.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now they're not hiding behind fair play anymore, because they're saying, well, if you opt in, you can, dish out 20 million to your teams. Well, they're saying, what about those people that aren't dishing out the 20? Then they're automatically not in the same. There's no fair level of play, right? So that's a facade that they're trying to cling to a little bit. But the NIL regulation they're absolutely trying to get past is the idea that a third-party arbiter has to decide whether or not a non-school NIL deal is legitimate beyond $600. $600.
I don't know why, Bobby. They just keep trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. It's completely pointless. And to your point, like the best example I can give you, Najee Kennedy, the softball pitcher that was at Stanford, transferred to Tech. Why'd she go to Tech? Because some rich benefactor that just loves Texas Tech softball decided to back up the Brinks truck to get the best softball pitcher in the country to go to Lubbock. Is it fair to everybody else that plays softball that Najee Kennedy got this money? No, but again, like you said, if somebody's willing to pony up the dough and this is what they have determined your market value to be, then go get it. I'm all for players getting what they can.
Yes. I mean, because I tell you what, the people on the other end of that, if it was them, they'd want the rights to be able to do that.
Exactly. The one regulation that I really want to see is, I think your agents, your lawyer, whatever, your representation, they've got to be licensed by at least one of the major associations in the country, either the NFLPA, the NBAPA. I just think, Bobby, there's kids that are getting the short end of the stick on NIL, and it is 100% not their fault.
They're getting the short end of the stick. The worst part of it is, Jeff, is that it's so unregulated.
Yeah.
I had one coach tell me that he had 6 different people contact him on behalf of a single player.
It's insane.
So 6 different marketing reps trying to talk to a college coach about one player. So imagine being a coach not knowing who even to talk to.
Yeah.
Because there's no agent of record for the college coach. It's a hot mess. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully it's something that we figure out.
I like how in the seedy underbelly of recruiting, we've gone from like street agents and handlers to trainers. And now it's, I'm a marketing rep. I'm a marketing guy. I'm a marketing person. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm going to take 20% of your salary. By the way, that's what they're asking. Yeah. It's insane. An NFL player takes 3%. An NFL agent takes 3%. And these marketing reps are taking 20 for these high school players. It's absolutely highway robbery. My take on it is, in the NFL, you have agents of record. I'll just be blunt. You have agents of record. They may need to go to that sort of system in college, where a player has to have, quote unquote, a agent of record. Hey, let's finish up with this one, because we talked a little bit about high school, or about the running back coaching position, and how Norvell McKenzie and EJ Bartell from Georgia Tech and Nebraska, respectively, are thought to be in the running for that job. Dean Neisner, is there a head coach in high school that could coach the running backs, possibly in an area that would benefit recruiting in that area? Look, Texas has 2 guys on staff that would probably really like to have the job.
Mm-hmm.
And they were successful high school coaches. Chris Gilbert at Lancaster is now a special assistant to Steve Sarkisian. Okay. He's already on staff, though. Jamal Finner was the head coach at LBJ, brought LBJ back from the depths of, made them a really good team. He's the Texas high school relations to high school coaches now at the University of Texas for Steve Sarkisian. Those two guys, I'm sure, would love to be a possibility at the running back position. But the question is, do I know of a head coach off the top of my head, Dean? I don't. Jeff, you have one that you
No, the problem, Dean, is most of the coaches that I've at one point in time deemed, hey, he'd be a good candidate to go to college. Most of those guys have college jobs now.
Yeah, Joey
McGuire, Jeff Traylor, Claude Mathis has gone to college and come back. Mike Jinks went from Cibolo Steel to coaching college football at Tech. Emmett Jones went from South Oak Cliff. He's at Oklahoma now. So it's kind of we'll get that next wave of guys to come in. But yeah, most of the guys that were at the top of the list, they've already got college jobs.
Yeah, Dana Kay down at North Shore, long time.
John Kay,
yeah, John Kay. Yeah, I said Danny K. My God, that my dad would be proud that I said that. All right, that's going to do it for tonight's episode of On Texas Football. This was Talking Ball. Jeff Howe alongside Matt Hutchison in the studio behind us. Thank you so much, Matt, as well, and thank you to all you guys for hanging out. Justin and Juan for these super chats, and everybody that asked questions as well. That's going to do it for tonight's Talking Ball episode. We'll see you bright and early tomorrow morning. Myself, Jerry Hamilton, hopefully he's feeling better, as well as Blake Monroe. You guys have a good one tonight. Good luck to the men's baseball team, women's softball team this week coming up. The basketball teams have off until Saturday and Monday, respectively. For Jeff, Matt, I'm Bobby. You guys have a good one. Hook 'em.